thank you.
Thank you. As soon as, there we go. Let me share my presentation here and we'll get started. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I am excited to be with you this morning. Thank you, Vander, for the lovely introduction, and Dupre for the awesome music, and everyone who helps make our time together possible. And thank you for joining me today. So thank you to all of you. I like to center myself in gratitude and start with it so that I don't forget. On Wednesday, the Missouri Women's Political Caucus held a multi-religious panel about the variety of religious beliefs around the issue of abortion. An Ethical Society of St. Louis member, Allison Heil, was on the panel. You can see her in the middle of this graphic created for the event. In my eyes, Heil is a humanist hero. She is the retired executive director of a statewide organization that trained adults to be better sexuality educators. She has worked in the fields of abortion care and sexual health education for more than 30 years. A founding board member of the Missouri Abortion Fund and their current board secretary, she's a champion for reproductive justice. During the panel discussion, which took place on Zoom, panelists of various religious faiths shared their religious views on abortion. And I was so thankful for Heil's presence. She was there to represent ethical humanism, and she did so perfectly. Some panelists expressed that their religions favor a woman's right to have an abortion, with few or no exceptions. The religions of other panelists called for some limits on when a woman can terminate her pregnancy. A self-proclaimed abortion nerd, Heil asserted that our movement supports a woman's right to choose regardless of the circumstances. She expressed a life stance that centered the autonomy and humanity of women. She made it clear that supporting access to safe legal abortion care is nothing to be ashamed of. And to me, this made her stand out among the panelists. During a platform Heil gave on abortions post-Roe earlier in the programming year, she stressed the need for us all to talk about reproductive rights. She said, "We can speak so that others can hear us. It is time that we stop being worried about whether we will be thought poorly of and take back the high moral ground. Outshine the opposition. Very few people believe in government-mandated childbirth, and yet that is the power that has been given to the states." During the panelist discussion, Heil led by example and shined so brightly, I teared up. She makes me so proud to be an ethical humanist. She carries on a tradition of humanist women advocating for all women and all people really to gain access to healthcare, rights, freedoms, and other vital areas of life that are or were off limits to them. I'm willing to bet that multiple women who are humanist heroes like Heil can be found in each of our congregations. For example, Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture member and human rights and community activist, Muriel Tillinghast. She has led a fantastically impactful and inspiring life. I loved learning about her. I watched the video that we showed. I listened to podcasts. It was really fun to learn about her. She co-founded Lucy's Children in Brooklyn with Rita Wilson and Ellen Rader. The discussion group aims to create a greater cross-cultural understanding. A Howard University graduate, Tillinghast was a field secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. The committee emerged in 1960 from student-led sit-ins at segregated lunch counters in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Nashville, Tennessee. It sought to coordinate and assist direct action challenges to the civic segregation and political exclusion of Black people. Tillinghast was instrumental And she was an organizer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and one of 3 female organizers who headed county-wide projects in Mississippi in 1964. She became the 2nd state coordinator for the Council of Federated Organizations. This was the umbrella civil rights organization, which called for the famous Mississippi Summer Project. The volunteer-driven project tried to register as many Black voters as possible in Mississippi, and it set up dozens of freedom schools, freedom houses, and other centers to serve Black communities throughout the state. The Mississippi Summer Project had a huge impact on the civil rights movement by helping to break down the isolation and repression that propped up white supremacy and the Jim Crow system. Also, before the Summer Project, the national news media didn't really cover the persecution of Black voters in the South or the danger faced by civil rights activists. The Summer Project, which Tillinghast was a part of, changed that. Tillinghast's lifelong activism started early. She was a youth organizer in junior high and president of the Nonviolent Action Group in college. She was a desegregation activist in Washington, D.C., and she worked behind the scenes in the March on Washington. She once said, "The movement continues in every aspect of my life. I have carried my understanding of its principles into the classroom, to work, into prisons and jails, and in my daily walk through life. It is as vital to me as the air I breathe." And she walks the walk. She has worked on issues of tenants' rights, prison education, medical experimentation, and immigration. In 1996, she was the New York Green Party candidate for vice president alongside Ralph Nader. She has advocated tirelessly for decades and achieved so many accomplishments and received a plethora of accolades for her life's work, far too many to mention here. She's an outstanding example of ethics in action. And as I said, I loved learning about her and other women humanists like her who have championed our values and strived to make the world a more just place throughout history. Women like Cora Calhoun Horn, grandmother of dancer, actress, singer, and civil rights activist Lena Horne, who attended the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture with her grandmother as a child. Calhoun Horn was an early member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, which has roots in ethical culture, and a founding member of the Brooklyn chapter of the National Association of Colored Women, the NACW, in the late 1890s. African-American women were often forced to establish their own suffrage organizations. The National American Women's Suffrage Association, the dominant white suffrage organization, excluded Black women from their conventions. In suffrage parades, Black women were forced to march separately. Also, the history of women's suffrage, written by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony in the 1880s, largely overlooked the contribution of Black suffragists. The significance of Black women in the movement went largely unnoticed and is still often ignored today. I know I didn't learn about it in school. The NACW's motto was "Lifting as we climb," and members, including Calhoun Horn, advocated for women's rights, as well as to uplift and approve the status of all Black people. Even though Black men officially had won the right to vote in 1870, voting required impossible literacy tests and high poll taxes. Grandfather clauses also prevented many Black men from voting. The NACW suffragists wanted the vote for women and to ensure that Black men could vote too. During World War I, in collaboration with the Brooklyn YWCA, Calhoun Horn led a Red Cross unit that created and repaired bandages. In recognition of her contributions, she was appointed to the Mayor's Victory Committee. She also held many leadership positions with the Brooklyn League on Urban Conditions and the Big Brother and Big Sister Federation. Calhoun Horn actively worked for Black and women's causes all of her life. Her husband, Edwin Horn, wrote of her, "Service was her religion. She enjoyed life to the fullest and was not forgetful of life's responsibilities." That resonates with me. Ethical humanism is my religion, and I try to cultivate joy as I focus on ethical action. And as a leader in training, I appreciate all the hard work and dedication of the women humanists who blazed the trails that led to opportunities for women to become leaders within ethical culture. A movement that wasn't always keen on membership, let alone leadership for women. Founded in 1876, the New York Society for Ethical Culture was the first society, and women were excluded from membership. Instead, they were allowed to join a ladies' auxiliary. The Chicago Ethical Society allowed women to be official members when it was founded in 1882. Go Chicago. The New York Society followed suit in 1886, and membership was required to be offered to women in all societies by 1893. That's not too bad. The first woman leader, ordained Unitarian minister Anna Garland Spencer, was hired by the New York Society in 1903 to be an associate leader. An educator and feminist, Garland Spencer became the first female minister in the state of Rhode Island in 1891. During her Rhode Island years, she served as the president of the Rhode Island Equal Suffrage Association. She helped establish the Society for Organizing Charity in Providence and worked for the regulation of child labor and factory safety. Spencer's interest in pacifism led her to be have a prominent position within the National Peace and Arbitration Congress in 1907. In 1915, she helped found the Women's Peace Party. She also became the first chairman of the National Board of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in 1919. And in 1920, she led the National Council of Women, which is the oldest non-sectarian organization of women in America. She said, "To the highest leadership among women, it is given to hold steadily in one hand the sacred vessels that hold the ancient sanctities of life, and in the other, a flaming torch to light the way for oncoming generations." She's inspiring. Her lifelong work inspired the American Ethical Union to establish the Anna Garland Spencer Volunteer Award. It recognizes lay members for their significant volunteer contributions to the success of their society and or to the AEU. Garland Spencer paved the way for the modern women who are certified ethical culture leaders, something I hope to be someday. Women I admire very much, like Dr. Ann Clayson, who is a member of the Brooklyn Society. It's funny because when she attended my first two talks in the series, I thought she was, coming to see me. And now I realize she's actually a member. So I had a little chuckle over that. Clayson was the leader of the New York Society for Ethical Culture from 2018 to 2019. She has retired and is now leader emerita. She holds a Doctor of Ministry degree in pastoral counseling from Hebrew Union College, as well as master's degree in German from the State University of New York at Albany and business administration from New York University. In the mid-2000s, Clayson served as a humanist chaplain at Adelphi University in Garden City, New York. This is a time when humanist chaplains were almost unheard of. Currently, she is the Ethical Humanist Religious Life Advisor at Columbia University and a humanist chaplain at New York University. Clayson once wrote, "We make ethical decisions all the time. Some are routine, imprinted on us from childhood and embedded in our culture. We may give little thought to greeting a neighbor or holding a door open for someone. Others require more thought. A process of ethical discernment requires identifying an issue, acknowledging our feelings about it, and gathering facts and considering alternatives. Who are you? And what kind of person do you want to be? How do you define the goodness? And how do you act the good, as founder of Ethical Culture Felix Adler often said? An outspoken champion for humanism, Clayson inspires me to act the good, and so do other women leaders. Riverdale Yonkers Society for Ethical Culture, Joan Johnson Lewis, illuminates the history of ethical humanism in a way that helps me think deeply and make important connections. Johnson Lewis has been an ethical culture leader since 1991. She served as ethical societies in Chicago, Northern Virginia, and even here in Brooklyn. A third-generation humanist, she is also an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister. She earned a Bachelor of Arts from Mundelein College's Women in Business program, and she received a Master of Divinity degree from Meadville Lombard Theological School. She is a prolific writer, and for almost 20 years, she published many thoughtful articles on thoughtco.com's women's history site. For more than 25 years, she's maintained a quotations website called Wisdom Quotes, and she also manages a popular women's history Facebook page. She is spreading the history. A quick Google search of her name, and you'll see she is cited all over the internet. Johnson Lewis recently wrote in her leaders blog, "As human beings, we are hardwired to connect. We are social beings, adapted to live in groups. Our development of language made even more possibilities for connection. I quote the thoughts of a poet who died some years ago and connect him as a fellow human being." I have had more conversations about the history of ethical humanism and Felix Adler with Johnson Lewis than anyone else on earth. Each time I speak with her, I discover a more meaningful understanding of what we discussed, and I always look forward to our conversations and interactions. The first woman of ethical culture, the first woman leader who influenced me was Kate Lovelady. She retired from being the leader of the Ethical Society of St. Louis in 2020 and is now the leader emeritus. She continues to serve as the main mentor for my leader training, and I'm grateful for her leadership and all she's taught me. Kate said of being a mentor, having a diverse, talented pool of leaders is crucial to the future of ethical humanism. And it's exciting to be a part of that process, especially to mentor new leaders in training. She began her journey of making positive change as a poet and a writer. But to make an even greater impact, she eventually transitioned into her role as an ethical leader. She realized she could probably do more good in the world as a leader than as a writer. She said to me once, "Many of the goals are the same, like being a public learner, trying to understand human life, and sharing sources of meaning, comfort, inspiration with others, especially to help more people have more meaningful and pleasurable lives." She's the first person who made me think deeply about cultivating meaning in my life and the importance of doing so. After earning her certificate in pastoral counseling from the Postgraduate Center for Mental Health, Kate served as a leader in training under Ethical Society of Northern Westchester leader Robert Burson, another favorite of mine. She accepted her first professional leader position in 2005 at the Ethical Society of St. Louis, after 4 years of studying and the internship through the American Ethical Union Leader Training Program. Kate spent 10 years as the singular clergy person for the St. Louis congregation, and for the next 5 years, an associate leader, James Croft, joined her team. I personally watched her in action, and she modeled the behavior of an effective ethical humanist leader. Her enthusiasm was contagious. She presented Sunday platforms and other programming, provided pastoral care and counseling of members, and led the organization by helping the community live up to the values. She helped members cultivate meaning and bring the best out in one another while appreciating the uniqueness and worth of every individual. She was an engaging public speaker and a skillful officiant. She said, although they are sad occasions, some of my favorite times at the Society have been presiding at the memorials of members, hearing about their early lives and stories by family and friends, and getting to celebrate their legacy. I have met so many amazing and inspiring people here, not just those who've done great deeds, but those who've simply tried their best to be good people and to do their part, however they could. Lovelady told me that the most exciting thing about a humanist community is that it is truly shaped by its members. She said, a society can be anything its members decide it can be. Do anything its members want to do. And if you don't know that you need this community right now, joining will ensure that it will still be there when you do need it. She stressed the importance of leaders who can listen and be non-judgmental. In fact, she told me one of the most important parts of providing pastoral care, which I think is a very important function of a leader, is acting in as a non-judgmental presence, a person someone can tell anything. She taught me that leaders should help congregation members navigate feelings, become more open to relationships, and not take things personally. Lovelady played a huge role in me wanting to become a leader myself. Her platform talks were full of practical advice and thought-provoking wisdom. They were inspiring, they were empowering. They helped me truly embrace ethical humanism as my religion. She was one of the first people that opened my eyes to the differences between secular and religious humanism. She helped me begin to shape my religious humanism, a process that I will continue throughout my life because I want to play a role in our future, the future of ethical humanism. Throughout our history, the women of ethical culture have met people on common ground to build communities of support and love through inclusion and communication, further proving there is no one right way to live and that we're all stronger together. Because of the examples set by great women leaders, I strive to be a compelling mentor to my students, coworkers, colleagues, friends, and strangers. My goal is to help others find their islands of competency, places from which they can draw their strengths, talents, skills, and passions for the motivation it takes to transform our communities. In other words, to elicit the best in others. It is an honor to be a leader in training. The opportunity to be a leader, an innovator, spreading humanistic values throughout space and time, and connecting people with the resources, information, and support they need to not only live expressive lives, but to also further the growth of humanism. That opportunity is not lost on me. Like many of the women before me, I understand both the responsibility and the happiness that this endeavor can bring, the sweet fruit it can bear. When I first began my leader training, the National Leader Council welcomed me during a ceremony. It was memorable. It filled my heart. We were on Zoom, and each leader bestowed upon me a sort of gift. To me, it felt very much like the scene in Sleeping Beauty when each fairy blesses the baby Princess Aurora with a special ability or trait. And that may sound silly to you, but I was thrilled with that connection. A fellow leader in training, Greg Bonin, thoughtfully transcribed the welcoming words and emailed them to me after the ceremony. And while I cherish the entire experience and all the wisdom shared with me on that day, I want to share with you the wishes and thoughts from our women leaders who were present. And I wish I could mention all the women leaders in the movement, but I just don't want to read a list of names. But here were their thoughts, their wishes for me on that day. Joy McConnell wished me deep compassion. Joan Johnson Lewis paraphrased Geoffrey Chaucer and said, "Gladly would she learn and gladly teach." Martha Gallahue advised that sometimes silence precedes the most creative action taken. And she encouraged me now and again to take pause. Great advice. Kate Lovelady told me to take all my vacation days and don't work too hard. She certainly knows me. And Amanda Poppy wished for me the joy of colleagues and friends, especially the joy and wisdom of the history holders. I want to be one of those history holders as well. And I'm happy to report that all these hopes and wishes for me are manifesting, except maybe for the part about taking time off. There's just too much to do. Anyway, those words offered on that day are precious to me, and I carry them with me and recall them when needed. They give me strength. And in that spirit, I will conclude my talk with a personal hope and a wish that you may carry with you, if you choose to do so. One of my hopes is that ethical humanists completely realize the contributions and efforts of all the women involved in our movement as tremendously valuable, because they are. May we know our history. Doing so is a part of the work it takes to create our future. And one of my wishes is that we foster and support the next generation of women clergy and lay leaders, especially when they challenge us to do better. May we listen to them while celebrating their accomplishments and treasuring their perspectives. Thank you.